If you found yourself locked in a remote cabin with no phone, no neighbors, and no way out, what would you do? This isn't just a hypothetical question. It happened to me. But here's the twist. What I thought was a simple accident turned into something much, much darker. There was something in this cabin the world wasn't supposed to find out about. And I was about to uncover it.
Imagine this. You're sitting alone in a cabin, counting the minutes as the sun disappears behind the trees. It's dead quiet, except for the occasional groan of the old wooden beams settling. Then, out of nowhere, you hear it. A single faint noise from inside the cabin. At first, you think it's nothing, but then you remember you're the only one here. Or at least, you're supposed to be. I didn't notice the door at first. When I tried to leave that morning, it didn't budge, not even a little. I assumed it was the wood swelling from the damp air, or maybe something jammed in the lock. Annoying, sure, but not exactly terrifying. I figured I'd grab a screwdriver or something, mess with the hinges, and be out by lunch. Except it wasn't that simple.
The windows wouldn't open either, painted shut or warped from age. My phone? Not even a single bar. Just empty reception, like the forest had swallowed the signal whole. Hours passed, and what started as a minor inconvenience became heavier, louder. Every creak in the floor, every pop from the walls felt different, like the cabin was alive. And then I found them. The scratches, just below the main door, running along the floor as if someone had dragged something sharp across the wood. Or maybe someone had tried to claw their way out. That's when I really started to feel it. The walls seemed closer. The air felt heavy in my lungs. I'd heard before that isolation can mess with your senses, but this was different. It wasn't just paranoia, it felt intentional, like the room was waiting for me to crack. I started pacing, checking every corner, every piece of furniture, trying to figure out what was going on. That's when my foot hit the first loose board. Beneath it, I found a folded-up letter, covered in dust. The paper felt brittle, like it had been forgotten for decades, and the words, "Don't trust the silence." My stomach dropped. This wasn't just an old jammed lock. Something else was happening here. Something I wasn't sure I was ready to understand. What would you do if every clue you found made the situation worse instead of better? That's exactly what started happening to me as I tried to make sense of the letter. Something about it felt off. It was signed with initials, L.M. But when I checked the papers left on the cabin's desk, the deed listed no one with those initials. Whoever wrote that letter didn't own this place. Maybe they weren't supposed to be here at all. Still, I kept looking. There had to be more, right? I decided to check the cabinets next. Tucked all the way in the back, behind a stack of dishes, I found an old photograph. It was faded, almost brittle, like it had been hiding there for years. It showed a man standing in front of the cabin. Tall, thin, with this pale, startled face, like he'd just seen something he couldn't unsee. He wasn't smiling. In fact, his expression stuck with me because he looked terrified. And in the background, in the corner of the photograph, there was this blurry shadow in one of the windows. At first, I thought it might have been a trick of the light, but the longer I stared, the more it looked like something was standing inside. The wall near that cabinet had this weird discoloration, a faint stain running along the paint, almost the shape of a large smudge. I scratched at the surface, and that's when I noticed it wasn't a stain at all. It was a carved pattern, like someone had taken a knife and pressed it deep into the wall. It wasn't random either. The symbol, jagged and circular, looked so deliberate it made my skin crawl.
I'd read somewhere that these kinds of carvings were used to ward off spirits or mark a dangerous place. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just someone's home. This cabin might have been a warning. Thinking back to the loose floorboard, I searched for more. Eventually I found it, another spot under the bed. That's where I discovered the map. It showed the cabin's layout almost perfectly, except this map had a room that didn't exist. A room no one was supposed to find.
I followed the map, my heart pounding with every step. It led me to a panel hidden behind a tall, dusty shelf. Prying it open, I found a narrow, almost claustrophobic tunnel leading downward. The air was thicker there, colder, like it hadn't been disturbed in years. At the end of the passage was a heavy wooden door with more of those strange carvings etched into the surface. Whoever hid this didn't want it to be found or escaped. The door opened to the outside, finally. As I made it out, I glanced back at the cabin. It didn't feel like I'd just left a place. It felt like I'd escaped something alive. Share your thoughts in the comments and let me know. Would you ever risk stepping inside a place like that?